An absolute disaster for Red Bull in Bahrain after 3 of the 4 Red Bull powered cars have to DNF towards the end of the race. It didn't look like it was going very well for the engines in the Red Bull car. So let's sort of delve into that today and talk about what happened, because it was looking like it was going to be an excellent weekend for Red Bull. Max Verstappen starting the race on second place, had a really good Saturday, just missing out on pole position to Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari that looked absolutely sensational. And then it just kind of dropped off, didn't it? Max Verstappen dropping out of the race, Sergio Perez dropping out of the race just 2 laps later, and of course Pierre Gasly dropping out of the race too, leaving just AlphaTauri as the lone Red Bull team running on the grid, and actually just Yuki Tsunoda to pick up some points for the Red Bull contingent. So it kind of went very, very bad for Red Bull, and I want to delve into what actually happened, because it happened very, very quickly. It all disbanded for Red Bull very quickly indeed. They looked like they were on for a really good points haul finish. Max Verstappen looked set for second, Sergio Perez looked set for fourth. It was all going fairly swimmingly, and even up to the point where Max Verstappen came in for another set of tyres. He came in for a third stop, tried to maybe undercut Leclerc or go for some fresher tyres towards the end of the race. They were going for a slightly different strategy because they were so far ahead of Carlos Sainz in third place. And Pierre Gasly's safety car came at just the wrong time for Max Verstappen, because that actually lended itself to Charles Leclerc being able to change his tyres under the safety car conditions, getting a free pit stop in and actually keeping Max Verstappen at bay for the rest of the race. And at that point, I think Max Verstappen had fairly happily accepted that he was going to come in second place. And it was lap 55 of the race where Verstappen initially thought he had a battery issue and later said that there was no fuel coming to the engine and everything just stopped working for him. And then Sergio Perez had the same issue just 2 laps later on the final lap of the Grand Prix, ended up losing positions to Lewis Hamilton and losing a podium position to Lewis Hamilton as well on the final lap of the race. But what actually happened? What was going on under the hood, and why were Red Bull the only team that seemingly had these issues? And actually, we can put Pierre Gasly to one side, because Pierre Gasly's issue, even though it was to do with the engine and the power unit, it wasn't exactly the same as the Red Bull issue that we had. So we're just going to focus on the 2 Red Bulls and what happened to Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. First of all, we need to know that Red Bull have now taken over the manufacturing of their own engine. They are no longer powered by Honda. I mean, they kind of still are. It's still very much a Honda engine, and Honda have had a helping hand in putting together this engine for the 2022 season. But Red Bull have opened their own facility, and they're going to be making their own bespoke engines for Formula One and for their Formula One team. So we're looking forward now to Red Bull as a new conglomerate, as a new manufacturer of engines in Formula One, with Honda's guidance. But there is that transitional period. And I think that was something that I pointed out before the season started, that Red Bull are in this transitional period, not only with the regulations like everybody else, but also with their engine manufacturer. And with that being such a crucial component of a Formula One car, they had to get it spot on. And I was, a bit hesitant to say that they would have done it perfectly, because they had the battle towards the end of 2021. They obviously had to come into this season with a brand new car, and they were expected to come into this season with a very, very good car. And they did come into this season with a very, very good car. Another thing that I think has gone a little bit under the radar, though, and I did a bit of research about earlier, is that the fuel has actually changed for Formula One. I think this went under the radar because, all these regulations, all the aero, the cars look completely different to how they have in previous years. And we were, taken back by the new front wings, the new side pods, the new rear wings of the car. We didn't actually look at some of the internal changes which have happened in Formula One. And we've actually switched fuels to something which is called an E10 compound. Now, I'm not going to pretend I know exactly what that means, but it does mean that the changes happen in the fuel systems itself. So it burns differently in the engine, it's delivered to the engine in a slightly different way, and therefore the entire power unit has to be manufactured around this new fuel and the way that it burns. It burns slightly hotter, and it's slightly more difficult to deliver to the engine overall. This is obviously with Formula One trying to be a little bit more eco-friendly and moving towards, a safer fuel for the future. And this E10 is that brand new fuel that's designed. So with that said, Red Bull come into the season with a brand new engine and a brand new fuel to take into account with all of these aerodynamics changes. And then I realised, I went back over testing, Red Bull never did a full race simulation during testing. Others did. Other teams did full runs, 50 plus laps, 60 plus laps on just one set of tyres or one set of fuel, and continue to see how far they could push their cars. Red Bull never really did these super long runs that we saw from other teams. And I think that maybe, that first inkling that they were a bit hesitant about their engine and maybe about whether it could last the distance of this entire season. We know that the engines are very, very restricted in terms of how many you can use over the course of a season, and with the budget caps in place, Red Bull were maybe taking it a little bit easier. Now, that could just be because it wasn't in their plans. They didn't need to do that race testing. They thought they were going to get that information from other places. But it seems a little bit strange that they were one of the teams that didn't do those race runs. And when it came to the final few laps, we're talking 3 laps from the end or 1 lap from the end of the race, this is when those issues started to arise. And actually the issue was that there was a vacuum in the fuel supply system, meaning no fuel could be passed from the delivery system to the engine. So there was basically a bubble of space in between where the fuel needed to be and the fuel was. So there was no way of the fuel passing through that. And the fuel basically got lower and lower and lower throughout the race, obviously, because they're burning through more and more. And this got to a point where towards the end of the race, it reached that point of failure where no fuel could be passed from the tank to the engine anymore. So on top of that, Max Verstappen had steering issues, braking issues, and even through that was looking like a very, very good race for Red Bull. But those issues did arise with their engine, and it is something that they will need to take into account with those longer runs and with longer races coming in the season as well. So a bit of a 50-50 race weekend for me in terms of Red Bull. I think, it's going to be a very demanding season. We're going to see lots and lots of teams. I know that Ferrari look incredibly good coming out of this race. Obviously, in terms of the constructors, they look miles ahead of it because Mercedes, realistically, that 27 points is very fluffed up for them because those Red Bulls both ended up not finishing the race. But it's a big point swing and it's a big determining factor already in this season. And of course, it's very, very early. There's 22 races in this season. Max Verstappen has been behind in championships before. We saw Lewis Hamilton take the lead last year and Max Verstappen was able to take it off of him. But he's never actually been this far behind. Lewis Hamilton was never 25 points in the lead in terms of the championship over Max Verstappen, which he is now. And bigger than that, it's 30 points dropped for Red Bull as a team. And as I said, very early. We know, though, that title races can be incredibly close. Last year, it went down to the wire, the final race of the season. If it did that again, and we're looking at Max Verstappen missing out on this 18 points, we're looking at Red Bull missing out on these 30 points, this could be a big turning point. And it is so difficult to say. Obviously, at the beginning of the season, with teams that are going to improve, could Mercedes come out and just be the quickest team again in 5 or 6 races' time? Maybe. Could Red Bull completely drop off a cliff anyway, and these 25, 30 points don't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things? Maybe. But 30 points is a big drop, especially when Max Verstappen is trying to defend that title and Charles Leclerc looks incredibly quick. Carlos Sainz looks incredibly quick. And you just have to believe that Mercedes are going to get better and better because Mercedes know how to improve a car and they always bring upgrades and they always do better as the season progresses. So we're going to have to see because Max Verstappen even exacerbated this point, the fact that he was disappointed with the team because he said at this level, we're already having so much information about the engines and stuff, it shouldn't happen. So he knows it shouldn't have happened. The team knows it shouldn't have happened. And yet Red Bull are now in that situation where they are catching, they're fighting. They're now the hunter rather than the hunted, with Ferrari being the team to catch. And it wasn't just them. The Red Bull power unit as a whole looked pretty good. Overall, without the DNFs, and if the race would have finished at lap 54, we'd be talking about Red Bull having a very, very good start to the season, including Pierre Gasly just before the safety car came out. He was running in the points. We'd be looking at the Red Bull team, the Red Bull outfits, and we'd be saying they had a very good start. If anything, it was the Mercedes power unit that maybe also has dropped because of this E10 fuel change, or maybe because of the regulations and how the engine works with the scaffolding that they've got around it and the aerodynamics around it. Because if we look again at how the race finished, the Aston Martin team, the Williams team, and the McLaren team in particular, all Mercedes powered and all had a terrible, terrible race. Whereas you look at the Haas's, the Alfa Romeos, and of course the Ferraris, all using that Ferrari power unit, had an incredible race. And Magnussen coming in 5th place, Bottas picking up a 6th place, both Ferraris on the podium, even Joe picking up his first point in Formula 1, all Ferrari powered. And then just slotting in between 7th and 8th place, Alpine by themselves with the Renault power unit, kind of found themselves in the middle of the pack. So it's interesting to know that this fuel change has arisen, and we are seeing a change in, the tier list that we used to have in terms of engine manufacturers. We used to say that the Mercedes engine was just dominant and unbeatable. Now it looks like the Mercedes engine's completely flipped to the other end of the spectrum. But it's still very, very early indeed. I just thought it was very interesting to see that Red Bull, with those changes to the engine, with those changes to the regulations, the fact that they've taken over from Honda and they were the team that fell apart, they were the team that capitulated, does catch my eye and maybe is something to watch out for the rest of the season. I'm not saying it's going to happen again, but we have to take into account those changes that have happened at Red Bull. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. What was your favourite thing that happened in the Bahrain Grand Prix? Subscribe if you're new. We're going to be covering every single race of the season. We've got Saudi Arabia coming up in just a couple of days' time. Leave a like on the video whilst you're down there as well. I'll see you next time.